You're not welcome here, Amara. I only invited you so everyone could see how far I've risen while you're still crawling in the gutter." My ex-husband Cheek's voice boomed across the decorated garden of the Eco Hotel in Lagos, and I watched 300 wedding guests turn to stare at me. The afternoon sun blazed overhead, illuminating the white and gold decorations that probably cost more than I used to earn in a year. His new bride, Ngozi, stood beside him in her imported lace gown, one hand protectively over her stomach, the other clutching his arm like I might snatch him back. But that wasn't what made my heart race. What made my pulse quicken was the envelope in my handbag containing documents that would turn this wedding into a funeral for Cheeky's lies. "I came because you invited me," I said calmly, adjusting the modest Ankara dress I'd deliberately chosen this morning. "Let them think I was poor. Let them believe his narrative. The truth would taste so much sweeter when I finally served it." The invitation said 2 o'clock. Am I early? What would you do if your ex-husband invited you to his wedding just to humiliate you? Hit like if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal and comment where you're watching from. Cheek laughed, that cruel sound I'd grown to hate during our 5 years of marriage. "Early? Amara? I didn't think you'd actually show up. I told Ngozi you probably couldn't even afford transport from that one-room apartment you're hiding in at Ajagun." The guests whispered behind their hands. I recognized some of them. Former friends, family members who'd sided with Chika when our marriage collapsed 3 years ago. My former mother-in-law, Mama Ego, sat in the front row wearing traditional coral beads worth a fortune. Her face twisted in disgust as she looked at me. "She has the nerve," Mama Ego announced loudly. "After she failed to give my son a child, after she wasted his best years with her barren womb, she comes here to spoil his happiness." The word barren hit like it always did, a knife between my ribs. For 5 years, Chiki and his family had blamed me for our childlessness. 5 years of hospital visits, traditional healers, prayers, and shame. 5 years of being called everything from cursed to possessed. When Chike finally threw me out with nothing but my clothes, everyone said I deserved it for failing my wifely duty. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said, my voice steady even as my hands trembled. "I just came to pay my respects." "Respects?" Ngozi finally spoke, her voice high and sharp. She was beautiful in that conventional way, light skin from bleaching creams, Brazilian hair flowing down her back, designer sunglasses perched on her head. "You should be ashamed showing your face here. Everyone knows you couldn't give Cheeky what I can." She rubbed her belly pointedly. "I'm already 3 months pregnant." 3 months? What did you give him in 5 years? "Nothing." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some people nodded approvingly. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. This was exactly what Cheeky wanted. A public execution of my dignity, a final humiliation to cement his victory over me. I looked at the man I'd once loved enough to defy my own family for. Cheek stood there in his ivory agbada, gold chains glinting at his neck, looking every inch the successful Lagos businessman he'd become. But I knew things about Cheek that these people didn't, things he thought I'd never discover. "Well," I said, reaching for my handbag, "since I'm here, I might as well give you your wedding gift." "We don't want anything from you," Cheek snapped. "Whatever it is, you can keep it, unless it's an apology for wasting my time." "Oh, this isn't for you," I replied sweetly. "This is for Ngozi. Every bride deserves to know exactly who she's marrying, don't you think?" I pulled out the first photograph, one of many in my bag. It showed Chike leaving a hotel with a woman who was definitely not Ngozi. The date stamp read 3 weeks ago. I held it up so the front row could see. Ngozi's face went pale beneath her makeup. "What is that?" "Just a photograph," I said. "I have 17 more. Different women, different hotels. Some were taken last month, some last week. One was taken yesterday, actually. Would you like to see?" The garden exploded in chaos. Guests surged forward to see. Cheek lunged toward me, trying to grab the photos, but I'd already tossed them into the air like wedding confetti. They fluttered down among the shocked guests, each one a bomb destroying the perfect image Cheeky had built. "You lying witch!" Cheeky roared, his face contorted with rage. "Those are fake! She's trying to ruin my wedding." "Are they fake, Chike?" I asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Is that why you're sweating? Is that why Ngozi is crying?" Ngozi had indeed started crying, mascara running down her cheeks as she bent to pick up a photograph. Chike? Chike, who is this woman? Why are you holding her hand? Baby, she's lying. Cheek grabbed Ngozi's shoulders. This is exactly what I warned you about. My ex-wife is bitter and jealous because I moved on. She probably paid someone to Photoshop these. Then explain this, I said, pulling out my phone. I'd been recording our entire exchange from the moment I arrived. Now I played a video, Cheek's voice, crystal clear, leaving a voicemail for one of his mistresses. His words were explicit, promising her money and trips and jewelry. The date stamp showed it was from 5 days ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Mama Ego stood up, her coral beads clinking. Amara, you wicked girl. How dare you bring this filth to my son's wedding? You're cursed. That's why you couldn't have children. God is punishing you for your evil heart. Something inside me snapped. For 3 years, I'd stayed silent. For 3 years, I'd let them call me barren, cursed, worthless. For 3 years, I'd hidden the truth because I was ashamed and broken. But standing there in that garden, watching Cheek's perfect wedding crumble, I felt power surge through me for the first time since he'd thrown me out. You want to talk about children, Mama? I said, my voice cutting through the noise. You want to talk about being barren? Let me tell you something that might interest you. I pulled out another envelope, the one containing medical records. My hands were steady now, my voice clear. The reason Cheek and I never had children wasn't because of me. It was because of him. Cheek is infertile, completely. I have the medical reports from 4 different hospitals to prove it. Reports that he hid from me, that he lied about, that he destroyed so I would continue to take the blame. The garden went silent again. Every eye turned to Cheek. His face had gone from red to gray. That's not... Amara, you're lying. Am I? I held up the documents. These are from the fertility clinic on Victoria Island. You remember, don't you? The one you told me we couldn't afford to visit because we needed to save money? I found the receipts after you left. You'd been going there for months before our marriage, and they told you then that you had a 0 sperm count. 0. You knew before you even married me that you couldn't have children, but you let me take the blame for 5 years. Mama Ego sank back into her chair, her hand over her mouth. Ngozi's crying had stopped. Now she was just staring at her stomach, her face a mask of confusion and dawning horror. If Chika can't have children, someone whispered loudly, then whose baby is Ngozi carrying? The question hung in the air like smoke. Chiki turned to Ngozi, his eyes wild. Ngozi stepped back from him, one hand still on her belly. Chika, she whispered, tell them it's not true. Tell them you're not infertile. But Chiki couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. The baby isn't his, I announced, because I couldn't help myself, because I wanted everyone to know. I've been investigating Cheek for 6 months, ever since I discovered the truth about his infertility. Ngozi has been having an affair with Cheek's business partner, Emeka. They've been together for over a year. The baby is Emeka's, but Cheeky doesn't know that, does he? He thinks it's a miracle. He thinks he's finally going to be a father. Ngozi's face confirmed everything. She turned and ran, her expensive wedding dress trailing behind her, her wails echoing across the garden. Cheek stood frozen, his perfect wedding destroyed, his lies exposed, his life in ruins. When he finally looked at me, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Why? He choked out. Why would you do this? Because, I said softly, you invited me to watch you humiliate me one more time. You wanted to show everyone how far you'd risen while I stayed in the gutter. But Chike, I haven't been in the gutter. I've been planning this moment for 6 months. Every photograph, every recording, every document. I gathered them all just for today. I wanted you to feel exactly what you made me feel. Shame, betrayal, public humiliation. How does it taste? I turned to leave, my head high, my heart pounding with victory and rage and something that felt almost like grief. Behind me, I could hear the wedding guests erupting into arguments, accusations, chaos. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more surprise for Cheeky, one that would arrive in exactly 3 minutes. As I reached the garden gate, I heard it. The sound of a car engine, smooth and expensive. I smiled and checked my watch. Perfect timing. Please hit that like button, subscribe, because my mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The white limousine pulled up to the Echo Hotel entrance just as I stepped through the garden gate, and I heard the collective gasp from the wedding guests behind me. The chauffeur, a professional I'd hired specifically for this moment, stepped out in full uniform and opened the back door with a flourish. Out stepped three children, my children. "Mama!" they shouted in unison and ran toward me in their matching outfits. Two boys and a girl, all 3 years old, all beautiful, all undeniably mine. I scooped them into my arms, kissing their faces as the wedding guests surged forward, phones out, cameras flashing, voices rising in shocked disbelief. My triplets, Chisholm, Chidi, and Shamaka, giggled and hugged me, oblivious to the drama unfolding around them. "Amara?" Cheek's voice came from behind me, strangled and confused. "Amara, what? Whose children are those?" I turned slowly, my babies clinging to me. "These are my children, Shaiki. The children I had 2 years after you threw me out and called me barren. Triplets. Conceived naturally with a man who actually wanted me, who actually valued me, who actually has functioning reproductive organs." The garden erupted in pandemonium. Mama Ego had risen from her chair again, her face slack with shock. Cheek stood frozen, his agbada suddenly looking ridiculous, his entire worldview crumbling before his eyes. That's impossible," he whispered. "The doctors said you were the problem. All those years, they said it was you." "No, Chike," I said, my voice sharp as broken glass. "You said it was me. The doctors never did. I went back to every single specialist after you left me. They ran new tests. They told me there was nothing wrong with me, that there never had been. They suggested I bring my partner in for testing. But my partner wasn't there anymore, was he? He'd already decided I was cursed and moved on to his next victim." Chisholm, my eldest son by 3 minutes, tugged at my dress. "Mama, is this the bad man you told us about?" The innocence of his question cut through the noise like thunder. Several guests actually laughed. Sharp, uncomfortable sounds. Cheek's face went red, then white, then red again. "Amara, please," he started, taking a step toward me. "We need to talk about this privately." "No," I said firmly, pulling my children closer. "We don't need to talk about anything. You wanted a public spectacle? You got one. You invited me here to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. Well, congratulations. Everyone we know now sees exactly what kind of man you are." From inside the garden, I heard Ngozi's voice rising in hysterical sobs. Someone was trying to calm her, but it wasn't working. Somewhere else, guests were arguing loudly about infidelity, betrayal, and lies. The wedding had completely fallen apart. My phone buzzed in my bag. I pulled it out and smiled at the message on the screen. Then I looked at Cheeky, at his expensive agbada and gold chains and the empire of lies he'd built around himself. "There's something else you should know," I said. "Remember that house you're so proud of? The one on Banana Island? The one you bought last year with the money from your successful business ventures?" Cheek's eyes narrowed. "What about it?" "It's gone. As of 30 minutes ago, it's been seized by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. You see, Cheek, while I was investigating your infidelity, I discovered something interesting about your business. You've been laundering money through fake construction contracts. The EFCC has been building a case against you for 8 months, and I've been helping them." The color drained from Cheek's face completely. You're lying. You don't know anything about my business." "I know everything about your business," I said. "I know about the shell companies in Abuja. I know about the falsified invoices. I know about the government official you've been bribing. I know because I gave the EFCC all of it. Bank statements, emails, recorded phone calls, everything. You remember my cousin Adaz? The one you always said was too ambitious for a woman? She works for the EFCC now. She's been very interested in your activities." Behind me, I heard sirens in the distance, growing louder. Cheek heard them too. His eyes went wide with panic. "This was all planned," he breathed. "The photos, the medical records, the children, The EFCC? You've been planning this for months. 6 months, I corrected. 6 months of investigation, preparation, and patience. You thought I was suffering in Ajagunle, broken and defeated. But Cheek, I haven't lived in Ajagunle for 2 years. I live in London now. I run a successful consulting business. I'm married to a man who actually loves me, who helped me heal, who gave me these beautiful children. I came back to Lagos specifically for your wedding, specifically to destroy you the way you tried to destroy me. The sirens were very close now. 2 EFCC vehicles pulled up to the hotel entrance, and officers in tactical gear began stepping out. The wedding guests scattered like birds, some running, others pulling out their phones to record what was rapidly becoming the most dramatic event Lagos society had seen in years. Mr. Cheke Okonkwo, one of the officers announced, approaching with handcuffs. You're under arrest for money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the federal government. Cheek backed away, his hands up, his face a mask of terror and rage. Amara, Amara, please, call them off. We can work this out. I'm sorry for everything. Now you're sorry? I said, my voice cold. When you threw me out 3 years ago with nothing but the clothes on my back, were you sorry? When you told everyone I was cursed and barren, were you sorry? When you invited me here today to humiliate me in front of 300 people, were you sorry? I didn't know, he shouted as the officers grabbed his arms. I didn't know you had children. I didn't know you'd rebuilt your life. Amara, please, don't let them take me. I'll make this right. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll give you money. I don't want your money, Cheek, I said. I have my own money. More than you ever had, actually, because I earned it honestly. What I wanted was justice. What I wanted was for you to feel exactly what you made me feel. Powerless, humiliated, and betrayed. How does it feel? The officers were pulling him toward their vehicle now. His agbada was twisted around him, his gold chains catching the afternoon sun. He looked absurd and pathetic, and nothing like the powerful man he'd pretended to be. Mama Ego finally found her voice. You witch! She screamed at me from across the garden. You evil, wicked witch! You've destroyed my son. May God punish you for this. I turned to face her, my triplets still clinging to me. Your son destroyed himself, Mama Ego. He destroyed me first, but I survived. Now he's destroyed his own life, and that's not my fault. That's his. Chiamaka, my daughter, looked up at me with concern. Mama, why is that woman shouting? Is she angry? Yes, baby, I said, kissing her forehead. She's very angry. But that's not our problem anymore. As Chiki was pushed into the EFCC vehicle, he looked back at me one last time. His face was wet with tears now, his expensive wedding ruined, his freedom gone, his reputation destroyed. I felt no pity for him, only a deep, satisfying sense of closure. The limousine driver approached me respectfully. Mrs. Amara, shall we go? Your flight to London leaves in 3 hours. Yes, I said, lifting Chiamaka into my arms while Chisholm and Chidi held my hands. Let's go home. As we climbed back into the limousine, I could hear the chaos continuing behind us. Ngozi's sobbing, Mama Ego's accusations, the guests arguing and gossiping. But I didn't look back. I'd come to Lagos to close a chapter of my life, and now it was closed. The driver pulled away from the Echo Hotel, and my children settled against me, tired from the excitement. Through the tinted windows, I watched Lagos traffic flow past, the yellow danfos, the street vendors, the buildings I'd once known so well. This city had been my prison once. Now it was just a place I used to live. My phone buzzed again. A text from my husband, Daniel. How did it go, my love? Are you okay? I smiled and typed back, perfect. Everything went exactly as planned. Coming home soon. I love you. His response was immediate. I love you too. The kids and I can't wait to have you back. You're the strongest woman I know. Chidi tugged at my sleeve. Mama, can we get suya when we get home? We're going back to London, baby. I reminded him gently. No suya there, but we'll get fish and chips, okay? Okay, all three chorused, and I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. The limousine turned onto the highway leading to Murtala Muhammad International Airport. Behind us, Cheek's wedding was in ruins. His life was in ruins. His lies were exposed. Ahead of us was a flight home to a life I'd built from nothing, a family that loved me, and a future that was entirely my own. But even as I savored my victory, I knew the story wasn't quite over yet. There was still one more piece of information I hadn't shared with anyone, not even Daniel. One more secret that would complete my revenge. And Cheek would learn about it soon enough, right after he spent his first night in EFCC custody. The thought made me smile. Please hit that like button. Subscribe because my mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The flight from Lagos to London took 7 hours, and I spent most of it watching my triplets sleep in their seats, their small faces peaceful and innocent. Chisholm had his father's dimples, Chidi had my nose, and Chiamaka had inherited the best features from both of us. Looking at them, I felt the familiar surge of protective love mixed with the bitter memory of what I'd endured before they came into my life. When the plane landed at Heathrow, Daniel was waiting at arrivals with balloons and that smile that still made my heart skip after 4 years together. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with the gentle eyes of a man who'd never once made me doubt my worth. When he pulled me into his arms, I finally let myself relax. "You did it," he murmured into my hair. "How do you feel?" "Tired," I admitted. "Empty, satisfied, sad, everything at once." He pulled back to look at me, his hands on my shoulders. "No regrets?" I thought about Cheek's face as the EFCC officers handcuffed him, about Mama Ego's curses, about Ngozi's tears. Did I regret destroying their perfect day? Did I regret exposing every lie Cheeky had built his new life upon? "No," I said firmly. "No regrets. He deserved everything he got." "Good." Daniel kissed my forehead, then turned to the triplets. "Who wants ice cream?" The children erupted in excited shouts, and we made our way through the airport as a family, our laughter drowning out the memories of Lagos. But over the next few days, as we settled back into our routine in our Kensington flat, Lagos wouldn't leave me alone. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from Nigeria. Former friends who'd abandoned me were suddenly reaching out, full of apologies and excuses. Family members who'd shunned me were calling to reconnect. Even journalists wanted interviews. The story of Chike's wedding disaster had gone viral on Nigerian social media. I ignored most of it, but some messages were harder to dismiss. 3 days after I returned to London, I received a video call from my younger sister, Adaze. She was sitting in her EFCC office in Abuja, still in her work clothes, her face serious. "Amara," she said without preamble, "we need to talk about the Cheeky situation." I was in our living room watching the triplets play with their building blocks while Daniel prepared dinner in the kitchen. I moved to the bedroom for privacy before answering. "What about it?" "His lawyer is claiming entrapment. He's saying you set him up, that you manufactured evidence, that you're a vindictive ex-wife who wants to destroy him out of spite." I felt anger flash hot in my chest. "Everything I gave you was real. The bank statements, the emails, the recordings, all of it was obtained legally. Chike did those things. I just documented them." "I know," Adai said, "and the evidence is solid. We have him on multiple counts of fraud and money laundering, but his lawyer is good, Amara, and Chike's family has money. They're preparing to fight this hard, and part of their defense strategy is to paint you as an unreliable witness, with a personal vendetta." "Let them try," I said coldly. "I'm not afraid of them anymore." "There's something else." Adizi's expression became even more serious. "Ngozi went to the hospital yesterday. She lost the baby. She's claiming the stress from the wedding caused it, and she's threatening to sue you for emotional distress and wrongful death of an unborn child." The news hit me harder than I expected. I sank onto the edge of my bed, my hand pressed to my stomach. "She lost the baby?" "Yes. Whether it was actually stress-related or just a coincidence, we don't know. But Amara, she's devastated, and she's angry. She's joined forces with Cheek's family to come after you." I closed my eyes, processing this. I'd wanted justice, wanted revenge, wanted Cheeky to suffer the way he'd made me suffer. But I hadn't wanted this. However much I despised Ngozi for her role in my humiliation, I wouldn't have wished a miscarriage on her. "I didn't cause that," I said quietly. "The baby wasn't even Cheek's." She was already involved in an affair with Emeka. If anything caused stress, it was her own lies catching up to her. I believe you, Adiz said. But legally, this complicates things. If she pushes this lawsuit, you might have to come back to Nigeria to testify. Are you prepared for that? Was I? I looked toward the bedroom door, beyond which my husband was cooking dinner and my children were playing safely. I'd built a beautiful life here, far from Nigeria's chaos and pain. The thought of going back, of facing Chike and his family in court, of reliving all those years of humiliation and abuse, it made me feel sick. But I'd started this. I'd orchestrated Cheek's downfall deliberately, methodically, with full knowledge of what it would cost. Could I really back away now just because the consequences had gotten messier than I'd anticipated? I'll do what's necessary, I told Adaz. If I have to testify, I'll testify. Chike and his family don't scare me anymore. After the call ended, I sat in the bedroom for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. When Daniel found me there, he sat beside me and took my hand. What's wrong? I told him about Adesi's call, about the lawsuit threat, about Ngozi's miscarriage. His expression darkened as I spoke. I'm sorry about the baby, he said when I finished. That's tragic, regardless of everything else. But Amara, you didn't cause that. Ngozi made her own choices. She chose to have an affair. She chose to lie about the baby's paternity. She chose to participate in humiliating you. Those were all her decisions. I know, I said, but I can't help feeling like I pushed things too far. Maybe I should have just let it go. Maybe I should have stayed in London and forgotten about Cheek entirely. Daniel turned to face me fully, his hands on my shoulders. Listen to me. What Cheek did to you, throwing you out, blaming you for his own infertility, turning everyone against you, inviting you to his wedding specifically to humiliate you publicly. Those things were cruel and calculated. You had every right to defend yourself, to expose him, to seek justice. Don't let them make you doubt that. But what if I'm becoming like him? I whispered. What if revenge has turned me into something just as ugly? You're nothing like him, Daniel said firmly. Chike lied and manipulated for years. You simply told the truth. That's not revenge. That's accountability. And if his family is now trying to turn you into the villain, that's because they can't face the reality of who Chiki actually is. I wanted to believe him. But that night, after the children were asleep and Daniel was working late in his study, I found myself scrolling through Nigerian news sites and social media, reading about the scandal I'd created. The comments were divided. Some people praised me for exposing Chiki's lies and fighting back against my abusive ex-husband. They called me a hero, an inspiration, a woman who refused to be victimized. But others called me vindictive, bitter, a witch who destroyed a man's life out of jealousy. They said I was cruel for ruining his wedding, heartless for causing Ngozi's miscarriage, evil for collaborating with the EFCC. One comment in particular stuck with me. It was from a woman who wrote, Amara had every right to be angry, but did she have the right to destroy so many lives? What about Ngozi's pain? What about Mama Ego, who's lost her son to prison? What about the wedding guests who wasted money on Asoebian gifts? Revenge isn't justice, it's just more pain. I stared at those words for a long time. Was she right? Had I simply spread more pain into the world, justified it with my own suffering, and called it justice? My phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number, Nigerian area code. Against my better judgment, I opened it. This is Mama Ego. We need to talk. Please call me. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. What could Cheek's mother possibly want to say to me? Was this a trap? A trick? Another attempt to manipulate me? But curiosity won. I called the number, and Mama Ego answered on the first ring. Amara. Her voice was hoarse, broken in a way I'd never heard before. Thank you for calling. What do you want, Mama? I asked, my tone cold. I want... She paused and I heard her take a shaky breath. I want to apologize. For everything. For the way I treated you. For the things I said about you. For turning my son into the man who hurt you so badly. I was so shocked I couldn't speak. I know you have no reason to believe me, Mama Ego continued. I know I was terrible to you during your marriage. I blamed you for Cheek's unhappiness, for your childlessness, for everything wrong in his life. But Amara, I've spent the last 3 days talking to the EFCC, reading the evidence against my son, learning about the things he did to you that I never knew about. And I've realized that I raised a monster. Mama, I started, but she cut me off. Please, let me finish. Chike told me you were barren. He showed me fake medical reports. He convinced me that you were the problem, that you were cursed, that you were destroying his life. I believed him because he's my son and I wanted to believe him. But it was all lies. He lied to me just like he lied to you. He's been lying to everyone for years, and I enabled it by taking his side without question. I heard her start to cry, and despite everything, I felt something twist in my chest. Mama Ego had been cruel to me, had called me cursed and barren, had celebrated when Cheek threw me out. But she was also a mother who just discovered her son was a criminal and a liar. Why are you telling me this? I asked quietly. Because you deserve to know that I'm sorry. Because you deserve to know that not everyone believes the lies Cheeky's lawyer is spreading. Because, she paused again, her voice breaking. Because when I saw those beautiful children of yours at the wedding, I realized what I'd lost. I could have had grandchildren. I could have had you as a daughter. Instead, I have a son in prison and nothing else. The conversation left me shaken. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of our living room, thinking about forgiveness and revenge, about justice and mercy, about how complicated it all was. I still believe Cheek deserved what he got, but for the first time since I'd started planning my revenge 6 months ago, I wondered if the cost had been too high. Please hit that like button, subscribe because my mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. 2 weeks after Mama Ego's unexpected call, I received a formal summons to appear in Lagos Federal High Court. Ngozi's lawyers had made good on their threat. She was suing me for emotional distress, claiming that my malicious and premeditated attack at the wedding had caused her miscarriage. The amount she was asking for was staggering, 50 million naira plus damages. Daniel wanted to fight it remotely, to hire the best lawyers and let them handle everything without me setting foot back in Nigeria. But I knew that wouldn't work. If I didn't appear in court myself, Ngozi's lawyers would paint me as a coward who'd fled the country after destroying lives. I needed to face this head on. 3 weeks later, I was back in Lagos, this time staying at the Eco Hotel, ironically the same place where Cheek's wedding had fallen apart. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Chinwe Afolabi, met me in the hotel restaurant the night before the hearing. They're going to try to break you on the stand, she warned me, stirring her coffee. They'll paint you as obsessed, vindictive, unstable. They'll question why you waited 3 years to expose Cheek's infertility. They'll ask why you came to the wedding at all if you weren't looking for revenge. Because I was invited, I said, and because Cheek specifically wanted me there to humiliate me. I have the invitation. I have text messages where he told his friends he wanted everyone to see how far he'd risen while I stayed poor. Good, Mar, Chinwe said. We'll present those. But Amara, you need to prepare yourself emotionally. Ngozi will be there. Chike might be there if he gets bail. His family will definitely be there. This is going to be brutal. She was right. The next morning as I walked into the Lagos Federal High Court, I was met by a sea of hostile faces. Cheek's extended family filled the gallery, all dressed in black as if attending a funeral. Mama Ego was there, though she wouldn't meet my eyes. Ngozi sat at the plaintiff's table, looking pale and thin, her hands folded protectively over her now flat stomach. And there, to my shock, was Chika himself. He must have made bail. He sat behind Ngozi wearing a simple shirt and trousers, his gold chains gone, his arrogance stripped away. He looked older somehow, diminished, but when he saw me, his eyes burned with hatred. The proceedings began. Ngozi's lawyer, a man named Barrister Okafor, was everything Chinwe had warned me about. Aggressive, theatrical, and determined to paint me as a villain. Mrs. Amara, he began during cross-examination, his voice dripping with contempt. You claim you came to Mr. Okonkwo's wedding because you were invited. But isn't it true that you came specifically to destroy the happiest day of his life? No, I said calmly. I came because Cheek invited me with the specific intention of humiliating me in front of our former friends and family. I have text messages between Chike and his groomsmen where he discussed how he wanted to make me feel small and worthless. I was defending myself. Defending yourself? Okafor's voice rose. By distributing intimate photographs? By making false accusations about Mr. Okonkwo's fertility? By contacting the EFCC with manufactured evidence? That's not self-defense, Mrs. Amara. That's a calculated attack. The photographs weren't intimate. They showed Chike with other women while he was supposedly in a committed relationship with Miss Ngozi. I corrected. The accusation about his infertility wasn't false. I have medical records from 4 hospitals confirming it, and the evidence I gave the EFCC wasn't manufactured. It was Cheek's own bank statements, emails, and recorded phone calls documenting his criminal activities. Everything I presented was true. But you waited 3 years, Okafor shouted. 3 years after your divorce, you suddenly decided to destroy Mr. Okonkwo's life. Why? Because you were jealous that he'd moved on and found happiness? I took a deep breath, feeling the eyes of everyone in the courtroom on me. This was the moment Chinwe had prepared me for, the moment when I could either break down or stand firm in my truth. I waited 3 years because it took me 3 years to recover from what Cheek did to me, I said, my voice steady. 3 years to heal from the trauma of being called barren and cursed every day of my marriage. 3 years to discover that Cheeky had lied about his own infertility and let me take the blame. 3 years to build the strength to face him again. And when he invited me to his wedding specifically to humiliate me one more time, I decided that enough was enough. I decided to tell the truth about who he really is. The truth? Okafor scoffed. Mrs. Amara, you have triplets now. Children you claim were conceived naturally. How convenient that you became pregnant immediately after leaving Mr. Okonkwo, when you'd been unable to conceive during your entire marriage. Isn't it possible that those children aren't biologically yours? That you adopted them or used a surrogate to support your narrative of victimhood? The question was so outrageous, so insulting, that I actually laughed. Are you seriously suggesting I faked having triplets just to make Cheek look bad? I have birth certificates, hospital records, and genetic testing if you want to see them. My children are biologically mine, and my husband Daniel's. The reason I didn't have children with Chike is because Chike is infertile. That's a medical fact, not a narrative. Okafor opened his mouth to respond, but Chinwe stood up. Your Honor, the plaintiff's lawyer is engaging in wild speculation and personal attacks. Mrs. Amara's fertility and her children's paternity are not on trial here. The question before this court is whether Mrs. Amara's actions at the wedding caused Miss Ngozi's miscarriage, and the medical evidence clearly shows that they did not. The judge, an older woman named Justice Adebayo, nodded. Sustained. Barrister Okafor, please confine your questions to the relevant facts of this case. Okafor looked frustrated but pressed on. Very well. Mrs. Amara, when you arrived at the wedding and distributed those photographs, when you played that recording, when you revealed Mr. Okonkwo's medical condition to 300 guests, did you consider, even for one moment, that Miss Ngozi was pregnant? Did you think about the stress your actions would cause to an expectant mother? Yes, I said. I knew Ngozi was pregnant. Cheek had announced it in the invitation, and honestly, I felt sorry for her, because I knew the baby couldn't be Cheek's. I also knew that Ngozi had been having an affair with Amika, Cheeky's business partner, for over a year. I had evidence of that too, though I didn't present it at the wedding. The courtroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Ngozi's face went white. Chike half rose from his seat before someone pulled him back down. You're lying, Ngozi shouted, her voice shrill. That's a lie. I never had an affair with Ameka. I have hotel records, I said calmly, looking directly at her. Credit card receipts, text messages between you and Amika dating back 18 months. I gave copies to your lawyer last week. Haven't you seen them? Okafor shuffled through his papers, his face reddening. The implication was clear. Either he hadn't reviewed all the evidence, or he'd deliberately hidden Ngosi's affair from the court to maintain her image as an innocent victim. Justice Adebayo leaned forward. Barrister Okafor, do you have this evidence? I, Your Honor, I received some documents last week, but I haven't had time to fully review. You haven't had time? The judge's voice was sharp. This case has been on the docket for 3 weeks, and you haven't reviewed the evidence provided by the defense? That's unacceptable. She turned to Chinwe. Do you have copies of this evidence for the court? Yes, Your Honor. Chinwe approached the bench with a thick folder. Hotel records showing Miss Ngozi and Mr. Emeka Okafor checking into the same rooms on multiple occasions. Credit card receipts showing Mr. Emeka paid for romantic dinners, gifts, and vacations for Miss Ngozi. Text messages between them discussing the pregnancy and their plans to pass the baby off as Mr. Chike Okonkwo's child. All of this evidence was legally obtained through private investigators and is properly documented. As Justice Adebayo reviewed the documents, the courtroom descended into chaos. Chike was shouting at Ngozi, demanding to know if it was true. Ngozi was crying, her lawyer was trying to calm her, and Chike's family members were arguing among themselves. Order! Justice Adebayo slammed her gavel. I will have order in this courtroom. The noise gradually subsided. The judge looked at Ngozi, her expression stern. Miss Ngozi, did you have a relationship with Mr. Emeka Okafor during your engagement to Mr. Chike Okonkwo? Ngozi's lawyer whispered something to her, but she pushed him away. Yes, she said, her voice barely audible. Yes, I did, but I didn't mean for it to happen. Emeka and I, and then I got pregnant, and I thought maybe it could be Cheeks, that maybe the doctors were wrong about his infertility, and I just wanted to be happy. Is that so wrong? To want to be happy? So the baby wasn't Mr. Okonkwo's, Justice Adebayo pressed. No, Ngozi whispered. It was Emeka's. But Cheek didn't know that. Nobody knew except Emeka and me. And then Amara showed up with her evidence and her children and her perfect revenge, and she destroyed everything. She's the reason my baby is dead. She's the reason my life is ruined. No, I said, and my voice cut through Ngozi's hysteria like a blade. I'm not the reason your baby is dead, Ngozi. Medical complications cause miscarriages, not wedding drama. I'm not the reason your life is ruined. Your own lies and choices did that. I simply told the truth. If you can't handle the consequences of your own actions, that's not my fault. The courtroom went silent. Ngozi stared at me, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. She knew I was right. She'd made her choices just like Chike had made his, and now she was facing the consequences. Justice Adebayo cleared her throat. Based on the evidence presented, it's clear that Miss Ngozi's miscarriage cannot be directly attributed to Mrs. Amara's actions at the wedding. Medical records show that Miss Ngozi had a history of complications that put her at high risk for miscarriage. Furthermore, the plaintiff's credibility has been severely compromised by the evidence of her affair and her intention to deceive Mr. Okonkwo about the baby's paternity. This case is dismissed. The gavel came down with finality. Ngozi's lawyer tried to object, but Justice Adebayo was already standing, already leaving the bench. It was over. As I walked out of the courtroom with Chinwe, I felt Cheek's eyes on me. I turned to look at him one last time. He was sitting alone now, abandoned by Ngozi, abandoned by his family, his face a mask of devastation. Was it worth it? He called out, his voice broken. Was destroying my life worth it, Amara? I thought about his question. I thought about the years of pain he'd caused me, the lies he'd told, the humiliation he'd put me through. I thought about standing in front of 300 guests while he called me barren and worthless. I thought about the life I'd built after leaving him, my children, my husband, my peace. Yes, I said simply. Learn. It was worth it. And then I walked away, leaving him sitting there alone with the ruins of his own making. Please hit that like button. Subscribe because my mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. 6 months after the court case, I received an email that surprised me more than anything else had in this entire saga. It was from Cheek. I almost deleted it without reading. Daniel, who was sitting beside me in our Kensington living room watching the Triplets play, saw my face and asked what was wrong. "It's from Chike," I said, staring at my phone screen. "Do you want to read it?" Daniel asked carefully. I did. Despite everything, despite all the pain and the revenge and the courtroom drama, I was curious about what Chike could possibly have to say to me now. The email was long, rambling, and surprisingly honest. Cheek wrote from prison, where he was serving a 5-year sentence for money laundering. He'd lost everything: his business, his house, his reputation, his family's respect. Ngozi had disappeared shortly after the trial, reportedly to South Africa. Emeka had also been arrested for his role in the fraud scheme. Mama Ego had sold her jewelry to pay for lawyers, but it hadn't been enough. But that wasn't what made the email remarkable. What made it remarkable was that Cheek had written to apologize. "I spent 5 years blaming you for my own inadequacies," he wrote. "5 years lying to myself and everyone else because I couldn't face the truth about my infertility. When the doctors first told me I couldn't have children, I was devastated. I felt like less of a man, like a failure. Instead of being honest with you, instead of working through it together, I decided to make it your problem. I convinced myself that maybe you were the issue, that maybe different doctors would give different results. And when they didn't, when every test confirmed what I didn't want to believe, I hid the reports and let you continue thinking you were the one who was broken. I watched you suffer for 5 years. I watched you endure my mother's cruelty, the pitying looks from our friends, the humiliation of being called barren. And I said nothing. I did nothing. I let you take the blame because it was easier than admitting my own truth. When I finally threw you out, it wasn't because I didn't love you anymore. It was because I couldn't face you knowing what I'd done. Every time I looked at you, I saw my own lies reflected back at me. So I created a narrative where you were the villain and I was the victim. And I convinced everyone, including myself, that it was true. The invitation to my wedding wasn't just about humiliating you in front of everyone. It was about proving to myself that I'd moved on, that I'd won, that your absence from my life was a victory rather than a loss. But the moment you walked into that garden, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. You were supposed to arrive broken and defeated. Instead, you arrived with dignity and truth. And when those triplets stepped out of that limousine, I felt something inside me die. The last piece of the lie I'd been living. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I brought this on myself. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you. I understand the pain I caused, the years I stole, the lies I told. And I'm sorry. I'm truly, genuinely sorry. I hope you're happy, Amara. I hope your children bring you all the joy I never could. I hope your husband treats you the way I should have. You deserve so much better than me, and I'm glad you found it. I'll spend the next 5 years in prison thinking about the man I could have been if I'd been honest, if I'd been brave, if I'd been worthy of you. But I wasn't, and now I have to live with that. Chike. I read the email 3 times, my emotions churning. There was anger. How dare he apologize now after everything? There was satisfaction. Yes, let him suffer. Let him understand what he'd put me through. But there was also something unexpected, a strange, small sense of peace. "What does he say?" Daniel asked gently. I handed him the phone. He read in silence, his expression unreadable, then handed it back. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore it. Part of me wants to write back and tell him his apology means nothing. Part of me, I trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. "Part of you wants to forgive him?" Daniel suggested. Did I? Could I forgive Chike after everything he'd done? After the years of emotional abuse, the lies, the public humiliation? After forcing me to become someone capable of the revenge I'd exacted? "I don't think I'll ever forgive him," I said slowly. "But maybe I can accept his apology. Not for him, but for me, so I can finally close this chapter completely." Over the next few days, I thought a lot about forgiveness and justice, about revenge and closure. I'd gotten everything I wanted when I destroyed Cheek's wedding. I'd exposed his lies, ruined his reputation, and sent him to prison. I'd proved to everyone that I wasn't the broken, barren woman they'd believed me to be. I'd won. But had I found peace? The answer, I realized, was yes. But not from the revenge. The peace came from the life I'd built after leaving Cheeky, from Daniel, who loved me unconditionally, from my triplets, who filled every day with joy, from my successful business and the financial independence I'd earned, from the knowledge that I'd survived something terrible and emerged stronger. The revenge had been satisfying, but it was the life that came after that actually mattered. 1 week after receiving Cheek's email, I wrote back. It was brief. Chike, I received your email. I appreciate your honesty, though it comes years too late to make a real difference. You're right. You don't deserve forgiveness, and I'm not offering it. But I do accept your apology for what it is, an acknowledgement of the truth. I hope prison gives you time to become the man you should have been. I hope you use these 5 years to heal whatever inside you was so broken that you chose cruelty over honesty, ego over love, not for me, but for whoever comes into your life after this. I'm not happy that you're suffering, but I'm not sad about it either. You made your choices, and these are your consequences. That's not revenge. That's just cause and effect. I'm moving on now, completely and finally. My children are thriving, my marriage is strong, and my life is full of love and purpose. That's my victory, not what happened to you, but what happened for me. Don't write again. This is closure for both of us. Amara. After sending the email, I deleted Cheek's contact information from my phone. I blocked his email address. I removed the last few photographs of our wedding from my old albums. I took all the documents I'd gathered during my investigation, the bank statements, the medical records, the photographs, and I burned them in our fireplace while Daniel and the children watched. "What are you doing, Mama?" Chimaka asked, fascinated by the flames. "Letting go of old pain, baby," I told her, "so we can make room for new happiness." That night, after the children were asleep, Daniel and I sat on our balcony overlooking London's nighttime skyline. The city glittered below us, full of light and life and possibility. "Do you regret any of it?" he asked. "The wedding? The exposure? All of it?" I thought about the question carefully. Did I regret destroying Cheek's wedding? Did I regret exposing his lies? Did I regret causing chaos in so many lives? "I regret that it had to happen," I said finally. "I regret that Cheek's cruelty pushed me to become someone capable of that level of revenge. But do I regret standing up for myself? Do I regret telling the truth? Do I regret proving to everyone that I wasn't the broken woman they thought I was? No, I don't regret that." "Good," Daniel said, pulling me close, "because that's what I love about you. You're not a victim. You refuse to be. Even when the world tried to break you, you found a way to rise." 3 months later, I received one final piece of news from Nigeria. A DICE called to tell me that Cheek had been moved to a different prison facility, one with educational programs. He'd enrolled in business ethics courses and had started mentoring younger inmates about financial responsibility. It wasn't redemption, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was something. "He asked me to tell you thank you," Adas said. "He said destroying his life was the best thing that ever happened to him, because it forced him to finally face the truth about himself." "That's not why I did it," I replied. "I didn't destroy his life to save him. I did it to save myself." "I know," Adas said, "but maybe both things can be true." After hanging up, I thought about that for a long time. Could my revenge have been both justice for me and a catalyst for change for Cheeky? Could something born from pain and anger also lead to growth and redemption? Maybe. Or maybe I was overthinking it. What I knew for certain was this. I was happy. My children were healthy and loved. My marriage was strong. My business was thriving. And every morning when I woke up, I wasn't haunted by what Cheeky had done to me or what I'd done to him. I was simply grateful for the life I'd built from the ashes of that old pain. Years passed. The triplets started school. Daniel got a promotion. I expanded my consulting business to 3 countries. Lagos became a distant memory, a place I used to live rather than a wound that still bled. On the 5th anniversary of Cheeky's wedding, The day that had changed everything, I stood in our kitchen making breakfast while the children argued over who got to sit where, and Daniel tried to negotiate peace. It was chaotic and loud and perfectly imperfect. It was home. My phone buzzed with a message from Adaz. Cheek was released from prison today, served his full sentence. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a moment, then put my phone away. 5 years had passed. Cheek was free to rebuild his life, just as I'd rebuilt mine. What he did with that freedom was no longer my concern. "Mama, the pancakes are burning!" Chisholm shouted, and I rushed to rescue them from the stove. Later that evening, after the children were in bed and Daniel was reading in his study, I found myself standing on our balcony again, looking out at London's lights. I thought about the girl I'd been when I first married Chike. Young, naive, desperately in love. I thought about the woman I'd become during those 5 brutal years of marriage. Broken, blamed, convinced I was cursed. I thought about the person I'd been on that wedding day in Lagos. Angry, vengeful, determined to make Cheeky hurt the way he'd hurt me. And then I thought about who I was now. A mother, a wife, a businesswoman, a survivor. Someone who'd faced her pain and her rage and found a way to transform them into something stronger than either. The revenge had been satisfying. The justice had been necessary. But the real victory was standing here, 5 years later, not thinking about Cheek at all, until someone reminded me he existed. That was the truest revenge. Building a life so full and beautiful that my former tormentor became irrelevant. As I turned to go back inside, I whispered into the night air, "I hope you find peace, Cheek. I hope you become better. But either way, I'm done carrying you. You're on your own now." And then I closed the door, walked into my warm, loving home, and never looked back. Please hit that like button, subscribe because my mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. Did this story touch your heart? What would you have done in Amara's place? Comment below.